You see this picture right here? That's how I looked last night after A, being exhausted from the amount of work I've been doing, and B, from how this episode melted my brain and confused the hell out of me.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Will, and this is going to be my spoiler review for episode 4 of Marvel's Moon Knight. I don't remember the title. I've only actually watched the episode once. You would think with how this episode ended, I probably should watch it a second time, but you know what? We're just going to do it. We're just going to run with it and just see where it takes us. Like all episode reviews, this is a spoiler review. So if you have not watched this episode yet, might I suggest watching the episode, then coming back and hearing my overall thoughts and review on the episode as well. And if this is your first time checking me out, hi, my name's Will, and I do geeky stuff on the internet. Do reviews, reactions, discussions, some gaming, some drinking, but it's usually all wrapped around geekiness, as you can see all around me and just emanating from my pores. I don't know what this voice is right now, but anyway. If that's something that you're interested in, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I'm on the road to 500 subscribers, and I really can't get there without you. So maybe subscribe to the channel. Maybe check out a video or two. Like, comment, share it around the internet. It would be fantastic. But enough about my rambling and all this other fun jazz. Let's talk about this latest episode of Moon Knight before I talk about the ending of this episode, which for me really changed up the entire concept of what the show is really going to be about. The first few episodes have been very kind of straightforward and I don't want to say streamlined MCU stuff, but it was very straightforward in terms of the story that they were telling. We kind of knew all the players and we kind of knew what the overall end game of the story was going to be going into this episode. And we pick up with this episode after the events of episode 3, where Khonshu is sealed away due to his actions and manipulating the sky and angering the gods to try to prove that Arthur Harrow is an asshole. But unfortunately, by exerting his power and with the help of Steven instead of Mark to try to turn the sky back in order to locate Amit's tomb, the other gods imprison Khonshu into a lovely little statue and is placed in a hall with a bunch of other statues. So obviously this isn't the first time a god has stepped out of bounds and forced other gods to take action. So without Khonshu available to help, Mark and Steven are basically powerless. They still have themselves, and we also had hints in the previous episode of a potential third alter personality, which is rumored to be Jake Lockley, who in the comics was actually kind of just like a taxi cab driver that Mark Spector's persona would just help feed him information when he is doing his superheroing. With the way that the series has presented Stephen Grant, who also in the comics, based off of my understanding, was the millionaire who was funding the whole Moon Knight operation persona. I'm curious to see if they've made a change with Jake Lockley, making him a much more brutal identity compared to Steven and even Mark himself. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. And we get a tease of that towards the end of the episode as well, during that trippy last 5 minutes of this episode. So once Steven's awake, him and Layla continue their pursuit of the tomb and actually arrive at the tomb as well. There's still tension between Layla and Mark, but Steven is the one currently in the driver's seat in this particular moment in time. And we get more of a weird love triangle forming, because Layla is developing feelings for Steven, but clearly has issues with Mark. And Mark still loves Layla, but is pushing her away because of his fear of Khonshu. And Steven just wants to live his life, but Steven's also developing feelings for Layla. It's weird. And because it's a love triangle with yourself and your current estranged wife. I mean, you can't make this shit up. But I do like some of the back and forth between Steven and Mark in this episode, especially once Steven is making his feelings for Layla known, where Mark decides to punch him right in the face. That's actually, that made me chuckle out loud, because Mark warned him. He was like, don't you dare kiss my wife. And they kiss, and the most awkward MCU kiss ever. It is such an awkward kiss, him and Layla kissing before they go down into the tomb. It's just weird and awkward. And then we get the punch, which I think is hilarious. As they're making their way through the tomb, we get our first looks at, I don't know. It's not a mummy. It's not mummies alive. It's not a mummy, but it looks like you know the creature from Jeepers Creepers? It looks like that clad in Egyptian garb. I think is the best way I can put it. And it looks like this creature or creatures is taking out some of Harrow's men, because we see the bearded guy who was one of his foot soldiers basically get thrown on a slab and gutted like a fish in this episode. So a chase ensues, and we get to spend more time with Layla and seeing what she's even more capable of doing, because at the beginning of the episode, Steven and Mark were knocked out, so she had to distract and defend them against the mercenaries who were sent to kill them, because obviously Harrow noticed the sky changing. So he sent some guys to figure out what the fuck is going on. So then, she took those guys out, and she's going toe to toe with this weird temple guard thing. And there's a really good jump scare in this as well. It got me. I had a feeling it was coming, but it did get me. But she held her own and defended herself in a really capable manner. So she's more than able to handle her own, which makes sense if that's why Khonshu is looking at her as a potential new avatar. But Khonshu's not having any avatars right now because he's locked away in a Barbie doll. Interesting conversation between Layla and Harrow, where Harrow spills the beans that Steven is indirectly or directly responsible for the death of her father, which we kind of got tidbits of that teased in episode 3, but we finally get the overall reveal, and she kind of knew something was up, and that's where we get a confrontation between her and Mark once they're reunited. But before they're reunited, Mark and Steven are investigating the tomb of Amit, and the tomb that they're looking at is the tomb of Amit's first avatar, which is, based off of Steven's understanding, is revealed to be Alexander the Great, who was not Egyptian, but he treated himself like he was an Egyptian pharaoh. But we get our long-awaited confrontation between Layla and Mark about what happened to her father, and Mark basically coming clean. He did not kill her father, but he brought the person who did. And that would explain why they were talking about the massacre at the dig site that they referenced in episode 2 that Mark was a part of, but he did not partake, if that makes sense. So he didn't kill her dad, but he is responsible. He's a means to an end of responsibility. And it just goes with the fact that he hasn't been forthwith with information with Layla, and part of that is some semblance of a guilt trip maybe, or a guilty conscience, because it does kind of sound weird and creepy. But before anything can really come of it, they are ambushed by Harrow and his men, which inevitably leads to Mark being shot multiple times by Harrow. And subsequently, I'm assuming he died, or did he? This is where the episode takes a complete turn, and I'm like, what is happening? So up to this point, the episode has been very straightforward and pretty much following what we know to have been reality at this point. And then it shifts over, the aspect ratio changes, and we get some weird, like, C-rated movie or TV special about an adventure archaeologist named Stephen Grant that is playing on a TV in a mental hospital. And we're going around the hospital. It's all in white and everything. It looks very much like, is this a legit hospital, or is this some sort of surrogate for the afterlife? Or is this something within Mark's mind of his broken psyche? Because we eventually pan over to Mark sitting in a wheelchair, and just facing a glass, calling for Steven. He's completely out of it. He's drugged. He's completely drugged. And then one of the orderlies comes over to, I guess, give him medicine or something, or to help him up, because he jumps out of his chair trying to reach the glass, and then realizes his leg is bound to the wheelchair, very similar to how his leg is usually bound to his bedpost when we were first introduced to Steven in the first 2 episodes. But there's so much in the space that is reference to other things that we have already experienced up to this point. It completely throws your interpretation of what the series has been up to this point up in the air. And we don't know what's right side up or what's upside down at this point. The same way that the series has cleverly used different visual shots throughout the first 3 episodes to show how things aren't necessarily the same in certain perspectives, which I always believed was just a representation of Mark's broken psyche. This just takes it to a completely new level because we know he was shot. Next thing we know, we're in this mental institution, and he sees Layla as another patient in here, and he sees one of the orderlies who was the same guy who was just gutted on a table like 25, 30 minutes ago in Egypt. And he is eventually brought to the head psychiatrist of this facility, and it's Ethan Hawke's Arthur Harrow, but I don't know if this is actually Arthur Harrow or if this is meant to be just a representation of someone else who looks like him. We start to play with this idea of like, was this all a manifestation of Steven's psyche? He begins to come to and tries to escape, and he ends up fending off from the orderlies without hurting anybody, but he does get away from them and is running through the hallway and runs into one of the different rooms. In the room, we see a sarcophagus and something screaming and banging to get out of the sarcophagus. When he removes the cover, we see Steven. So we have Mark and Steven actually face-to-face in physical space for the first time. Face-to-face in physical space for the first time. Try to say that 3 times fast. At that moment, I really was like, okay, this has to be in his mind. I don't... this just drove me nuts. It's crazy, man. But it's a really interesting interaction that we haven't seen up to this point, because they're both excited to see each other because they both think they're crazy at this point. And they're trying to make their way through the facility, and they pass by another room. And this is why I said I think we're going to get our reveal of our next altar with another sarcophagus in it, also moving and shaking, something trying to get out. I think that's Jake Lockley, or whatever version of Jake Lockley. I think that's the third persona, the one that is a lot more brutal. And then the episode ends as they are encountered by an Egyptian hippopotamus god. And that's where it ends, with both of them screaming at this really well-designed hippo with a very pleasantly high voice, just like completely out of the blue, and that's when the episode ends. And the credits, of course, continue the trend of the moon slowly becoming a full moon. So within the next 2 episodes, by the finale, there should be a full moon. And that could lead us to our premiere of Werewolf by Night that we're supposed to get this fall, where we're supposed to get a werewolf and possibly a cameo by Blade, from what I've been reading, which is just insane. So overall, those are the major talking points of this episode. The first 2/3 of the episode are basically continue the path of what we've experienced up through the series to that point, and then everything changes when Mark is pretty much killed, and then he's sent someplace, or is he just snapped out of whatever fantasy that he's been living? If that's the case, I think everything up to this point has been real. I think what he's experiencing right now is that period where it's potentially on the verge of death or something like that. I feel like that's where we're at in this. I think this is him trying to navigate his own broken mind, and I think it's going to take both him and Steven to finally come together to become whole again, or even a version of whole as best as you can get. I don't know. It's so confusing, those last 5 minutes of the episode, because for a minute, up until the point where he encounters Steven as a separate being in this space, I really started to question, is this what they're doing? Because it's hard to believe that they're going to have all of this wrapped up in 2 episodes. There's so many things. This seems like a weird spot for me, at least for me personally. It seems like a weird spot to throw this sort of major curveball at us, because the next episode would literally have to be them answering these questions, potentially reviving Khonshu, and then the finale is Moon Knight going up against Harrow while Khonshu deals with Ammit, or some variation of the two. I'm just guessing. I don't know if I'll be right or not. But this series has been such a trip, and for a minute I started to feel like, well, this is a fun series. I like a lot of the visual stuff, but the story hasn't really gripped me. Now the story is completely blown off my head.
Phrasing?
Yeah. Really gotta work on that. This is my only thing with a lot of the MCU series, and this has to do with the pacing. Some of the pacing is usually breakneck speed because you have to get through all of the stuff to get to the finale if you're only doing 6 episodes. And pretty much everything has been 6 episodes except for WandaVision. Maybe Loki. I have to look back at Loki. And I know, like, What If was longer. What If was like 9 episodes. So I feel like one of the things that might be hurting some of the series from a pacing standpoint is the fact that you're trying to do so much in 6 episodes, which is a lot. So to introduce such a crazy train, to introduce such a crazy change in the overall series up to this point in the 4th episode feels wild. If they had started halfway through it, maybe it would be easier to digest. But I think if the series is going for this discombobulated feel, this makes total sense. I'm very excited for next week. I really want to figure out what's going on. I'm hoping within the next 2 episodes we can get a strong finish to the series. But yeah, this has been one of the major developments since probably the first 2 episodes. I think episode 3 was cool, but I think I'm realizing Steven is the more interesting of the 2 compared to Mark. Mark's okay, but Steven seems to be one of the more complex characters to a degree. Mark is very standard for me. He's a mercenary. He's more of the headstrong one. He's obviously the one who's the more capable fighter of the 2, but still has an honor and a sense of code, but he's also dealing with a lot of personal baggage. And Steven is kind of the audience surrogate in terms of what the hell is going on. He is the more intelligent of the 2 from a book smart sense, and it just slowly feels like it's going to get to a point where maybe this will happen in the next episode, where there'll be some sort of compromise between Mark and Steven to work together and to balance each other better, because I think they serve as 2 distinct versions of the same person. And I'm unfamiliar with a lot of what goes on with dissociative identity disorder. And the series hasn't really, now I want to say played with it, but really kind of explored it more than just having 2 distinct personalities happening at the same time. So maybe them finding balance with each other, and maybe that's what episode 5 will mostly be, is to find balance with each other to become a more complete hero in order to stop Haro. Yeah. But overall, I thought the episode was fun. Episode 4s of most of the MCU series have always been the big twist. WandaVision had when we discover what Wanda's doing and that she is the one controlling everything. With Falcon and Winter Soldier, that was the episode where John Walker went all ham and we got the blood on Captain America's shield. Loki's episode 4 was when we discovered that, oh, hey, guess what? The Time Masters are BS, and Loki got, he got completely vaporized. So episode 4s have always been the reveal episodes within these 6 episode series, or even longer, because again, WandaVision. So I have some level of confidence that they will wrap this up in a very interesting and exciting way. We'll just have to wait to see what happens. So let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comments down below. If your mind was blown as much as mine, what's so much blowing happening? Not enough. But anyway, that's my overall review of episode 4 of Moon Knight. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching this and all my videos. I really do appreciate it. If this was your first video and you enjoyed it, or you like my absurdity, feel free to subscribe. Help me get to 500 subscribers. Check out some of the other videos I have on the channel now. I just did a trailer reaction for the new Thor Love and... I just did a trailer reaction for the new... I just did a new trailer reaction for Thor Love and Thunder. That is currently on the channel right now. I will be doing the rest of the episodes of Moon Knight as we are wrapping up this series and leading into Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ms. Marvel. Next few videos, you might not see me here. I've got to travel over the next few weeks, but I will be keeping up with content as best as possible. So subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. You can follow me on most social media platforms. They're all listed at the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And as always, until next time, I will catch you later. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you did like this video, why not give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends? You can subscribe to the channel by clicking on my gorgeous little face right over there. You can follow me on all the various social media platforms right below. And last but certainly not least, if you've got a few extra minutes, why not check out one of the lovely videos floating right over here. Later.